All right, we'll carry on with the morning session here. Our next topic this morning is we've got an app for that. So if you got a phone with you or a tablet, I'm sure you'll be interested in this topic here. This is Rob Sharkey, if I pronounce it correctly. Head shark of the Shark Farmer. Biography here I have. Rob is known in digital circles as the Shark Farmer. Is not your average Illinois grain farmer. He's a disruptor who is unwavering in his ability to directly address controversial topics. His provocative style parallels a story-based structure, which resonates with thousands of weekly global listeners on his podcast and weekly Sirius XM radio show. So please welcome Rob Sharkey.
Thank you. Yeah, they send out the bio so that we can go over that, and I see in there that they described me as the head shark, and I didn't correct them because I thought that was kind of cool. My name is Rob Sharkey, and I might have to speak louder now. My name is Rob Sharkey. I'm from Illinois, and I'm a grain farmer there. I raise corn and soybeans. And today we're supposed to talk about top 10 apps. That's a pretty hard subject because everything is so specific. Do we got to switch out here? Okay. Okay. When you really start to get down into apps there, it's so specific because especially here in agriculture, a lot of the apps are the companies that you deal with. So really in talking with Manitoba Ag Days and what they really wanted, they're like, well, why don't you just get up there and talk about yourself? I'm like, well, that's kind of dumb. So what I did was kind of chronologically did how apps have affected the way I've gotten to here today. So I hope you appreciate the thought process behind this because I'm not sure it's going to work. All right, how many of you have smartphones? We need hands up if you got them. All right, and you do have apps, right? You've downloaded some apps on your smartphones. Before you go through this and you see my top 10, I want you to yell out what your favorite app is, your most used app. Okay, I didn't understand any of that. But I did hear, okay, so maybe one at a time. So I heard one here. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like a great app. Yeah, is it your app? Did you make it? Oh, that's unfortunate. There was another one up here. The weather. Yeah, there's like 9 million weather apps. I use Weather Underground, but I mean, I don't know, what kind do you use? I don't even, yeah, where is that, a Canadian one? Gotcha. Yeah. I think probably the weather app is what I found is talking to people, weather app, and then the flashlight app. Everybody seems to have a flashlight app. My number 10, of course, is Google. How could you not have Google? It's the encyclopedia of today. You can find out anything. It's amazing watching my kids have a discussion like at a dinner table or something. You don't even discuss whether something's right or not. They're Googling it. They were watching The Wizard of Oz, and they wanted to know how much the hat on the Munchkin King was worth. I couldn't believe they Googled it, and they didn't even finish typing it. You know how it fills it out for you? Google is amazing. Of course, I would assume everybody has it. A lot of times the phones come launched with it. And you can find out who the hell's talking to you. If you Google me, man, that's pretty good. Husband, yeah, I've been married for 22 years. I got 4 kids. I've been a farmer for about 22 years. I'm on Sirius XM, a podcast, a magazine publisher, and an instigator. Okay, my number 9. All right, so this goes back to a story, right? And I'm not even following the rules because technically this isn't an app. It's a website, but it's a really good website that I use on my farm. It goes back to when I first started farming, right? I graduated from college. I moved back to the farm basically as a hired man working for my dad for like 2 years. And then, you want to move up, right? You want to start farming on your own. You want to start getting some equity, this, that, and the other. So my dad agreed to lease me 2 of his hog buildings. And I filled them up. I bought feeder hogs. I bought them in at 50 pounds, and then I was going to feed them out to 250. And I'd been doing it for him for 2 years. I knew how to do it. Easy money, right? Well, that was 1998. In the fall of 1998, when my hogs were ready, was a record low hog prices. I was so broke. I was so broke I couldn't even pay attention. Ha ha ha. Yeah. I was to the point where I had hogs at 250 pounds, and it was going to cost me more to pay the semi truck to take them to the packer than they were worth. So I didn't know what to do because I couldn't afford to keep feeding them. So I took the lumps, and yeah, I was heavy in debt. Debt like you couldn't believe, and a lot of it was because I didn't know my margins. I'd been working for Dad for 2 years. Dad was pretty good at forward contracting and that was a tough lesson. So yeah, right out of the bat, farming, right out of the bat, I'm broke. The bank called, there's a surprise, and they said, come on in, because we need to talk. And yeah, we knew what that was. And we were sitting in the bank, and they just built a new branch, because the bank was doing great. And I was talking to the main guy, right? This guy was like a local legend. And he had the biggest office in there, and the back was like this gorgeous window with like the arch on top and everything. And as he's telling me that I'm broke and that I got to stop farming and that I'm young and I need to declare bankruptcy, your mind wanders, right? And I'm sitting there paying attention to something you usually wouldn't, because in a tree behind that window, there was 2 pigeons, and they were mating. And as he's telling me my life dreams are squashed, I'm sitting there thinking, I have so much in common with that bottom pigeon right now. He did. He said, he looked at my wife and me and he said, file bankruptcy. You guys are young. I think we were like 23 at the time. So we went home defeated, stayed up that entire night talking about what we really wanted. We wanted to farm. We wanted to live on a farm, wanted to raise children. We didn't have any at the time. So eventually, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and my wife and I just decided, no, we're not going to let the bank tell us what to do. So the next morning, we went from like all depressed that night to the next morning, we were just ticked off at the world. So we called the bank, we told them to go pigeon off, and we were going to pay off everything. Had no idea how we were going to do it, but yeah. So we were failed hog farmers. Yeah, at the same time I was getting kicked out of Farm Bureau because it goes back to the instigator type of thing. So I had zero direction on what I was going to do. Takes me to my next app, Antler Insanity. Does anybody have this app? It's a great app. It's not necessarily a farming app, but for a hunting app, this thing is the best out there. You can mark your stands right to the point, so you can mark your trail as how you tell how people to get in there. And you can transfer that information to someone just simply. You can let someone look at your account, does the wind and everything. So for any hunting, this is, bar none, the best app that I use. The reason I use it is because when we were broke and trying to figure out money, I had a friend that was doing some deer outfitting. So he was leasing ground, and he had hunters come in, basically subleasing to the hunters. So I thought, well, that doesn't sound like such a bad idea. We had a bunch of hunting ground around. I took a job managing a producer and buying co-opper, so I was working with about 70, 80 farmers, and they all knew I hunted. And they're like, well, you should come hunt our ground. So I'm like, well, there's all this ground to hunt. This is easy money. So I put an ad in the back of a magazine, Whitetail magazine. I had 100 phone calls in a month. I just lined them up. Somebody called, hell, you want to hunt that day? Let's do it. Didn't ask them any questions or anything like that. Man, what a train wreck that was. I mean, a complete and utter train wreck. These guys were jokes, and instantly I realized this wasn't their reputation on the line. People weren't going, hey, that guy from Virginia is a goofball. They're like, no, Sharkey's hunters are horrible. It came to a point, one morning, it was 4 o'clock, and my phone rings. And I pick it up, and there was one of the hunters, and this was a really big guy. And he says, listen, my wife bought me these new boots, and I can't quite get bent over enough to get my shoes tied. I said, well, what do you want? He said, well, can you get out of bed and come help me tie my shoes? This is back when you had the flip phones, you know? So I just slammed it, threw it against the wall, all dramatic, and my wife's like, what is wrong? So we're never doing this again. This is the biggest mistake ever. We had one group of hunters left. I said, as soon as they're done, we're wrapping it up and quitting. The 4 guys that came at the end were great, fantastic. And when they left, they called about a month later and said, hey, if we can bring more people like us, would you do it again next year? And we did, and that was 20 years ago. So it's worked fantastic. The outfitter is what pulled me out of debt. It took 8 years for us to pay off that debt, but it's something that I'm very, very, very proud of. Oh, social media. Who's on social media here? Raise your hands. Okay. Any guess the number 1 social media app out there? Who's going to guess? Yeah, I heard every one of them. It's actually Facebook by quite a bit. Facebook's still the king. Instagram is next. YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter is pretty far down there. I would say though in agriculture it is a little higher. Twitter is higher, but Twitter I think is a dying app, which sucks because that's my main platform. Actually, right behind Facebook is WhatsApp. Does anybody have WhatsApp? That is the app that everybody should have because it's a group chat app that goes with Androids and iPhones. It's easy to post anything on there, videos or pictures. It's easy to post a tweet or a Facebook post or an Instagram because let's be honest, for a lot of groups, that's what you're doing is making fun of other people on social media. If you want to do that, I would suggest WhatsApp. But yes, Facebook is still king. Snapchat, I don't know, maybe I'm too old for it. How many people have Snapchat? Okay, of you people that have Snapchat, is that your main source of communication? Yeah? You in the back, you were a Snapchatter, that's what you do. All day, every day. What's that? You're spying on your neighbors. That was the drone guy that just left. You should talk to him. Yes, I kind of became popular on Twitter. It's going back about 4 years now, and I just got on Twitter. I was just playing around with it, and then around Christmas time, my electricity went out, and it was out from Christmas to New Year's. I had nothing else to do but to sit home and babysit my little generator that basically ran the furnace, and that was it. Wife and kids went to the in-laws. That's all I had to do. Or snowed in, couldn't do anything. I didn't have a heated shop at the time. So all I did was tweet my power company again and again and again and again. Yes, I think there was over 60 times that I tweeted, and then I tweeted the screenshots there. Just random thoughts of a guy that was on the verge of losing his mind because he had no electricity. In 1 week, I gained about 2,500 followers, and in the next week, I gained about another 1,000. This was back when Twitter, when stuff trended, it trended nationally, and it trended and went huge, and all of a sudden, I had to pay attention to what I was tweeting. Please tell me someone sees the humor in this. That's the thing about social media. I mentioned that I didn't get along with the farm groups that well because my ideas did not coincide with theirs. And when I was politely asked to leave the Farm Bureau in the United States, I didn't know quite what to do because it felt like you had to be part of a farm group to have a platform. But then social media came along, and you kind of realized that you can do whatever you want, and people can listen to you. In no way did I ever think that it was going to become like a business or anything like that. I was just having fun with it. I used to cuss a lot on it, but then now we have advertisers. Oh yeah, well, going back to this though, the thing with the advertisers and people making money off social media, because that tends to be something that's gaining popularity. People want to do that, right? We want to gain some money, we want to have some extra money coming in because my social media is great. Just do it for fun if you want to do it for fun. You can't always keep up with people. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you look at social media and you say, boy, how is that person getting so many likes or retweets or shares or whatever. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. There's a lot of people that buy followers, a lot of people that buy likes, retweets, all that stuff. So don't get caught up in it. If you see a tweet that's not that funny and it has 20,000 likes, it's because they bought them. You can buy likes cheap. I mean, for like $10, you can buy 1,000 likes. So don't get caught up on that. I've never bought, by the way. I'm just going to say, I earned my followers the old-fashioned way by ignoring my family. Okay, so I had the outfitter. I was on social media, and the outfitter was kind of, I don't know. Well, basically, I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it because this was back when corn was $5, and you really didn't have to do anything but make money. So I asked a social media hunter to come in, Carrie Zelka, and she had a podcast, and she'd been doing, I didn't even know what a podcast was. She'd been doing it for 5 years, so it's like she was on the beginning of it. She came and hunt, and we talked and podcasting and all this. And I'm like, you know what? I've got a notebook full of funny stories about hunting. Anytime anything happened, like the guy that couldn't tie his shoes, I wrote it down as a story. She's like, well, you should do a podcast about that. It'd be hilarious. I'm like, of course it would. That would be the funniest thing. Everybody would love it. Thing I found out after doing about 3 or 4, if you weren't there and you didn't know the people that I was talking about, it wasn't funny at all. It wasn't even close to funny. It was like a big inside joke. I did 5, though. I did 5 podcasts to begin with that I launched, and 2 of them had farmers on them, where I just talked to farmers. And those took off. Those took off incredibly. So, yeah, my number 6 is the podcast apps. If you got an iPhone, iTunes, Android, I would suggest Podbean. I think that's the best because you can run Podbean and you can still look at other stuff. It's not like if you have a podcast running, you can't look at other stuff. Podbean will allow you to. Plus, you can skip ahead 30 seconds, like if you've got an ad. Not that, I will say my advertisers are in the room right now, so we'll just ignore that. Ignore that fact. So I started the podcast, and I couldn't believe what was happening. It was just taking off. There was other ag podcasts out there, but they were kind of that standard, marketing, weather, that type of thing. I was just having conversations with people. We used to cuss again. I don't do that anymore. So that's about the only thing that's changed from the beginning to the end. So yeah, my main one is Shark Farmer Podcast. And then I do What the Farm Podcast with a Canadian, Leslie Kelly from Saskatchewan. You know where that's at? It's like, I think that direction, right? No one corrected me anyway. And then I couldn't find Ag Podcast anywhere, so I started a Farm and Rural Ag Network where we've got farm podcasts, we've got farm vlogs, where a vlog is like a YouTube channel about agriculture, which I think is probably going to be the next wave. So it's been fun. It's been interesting, and really it's the reason that I'm here. But here again, through that social media, through that outfitter is a reason that I even started a podcast. Number 5, yes, and the podcast was going good, and we started being approached by companies saying, hey, have you ever done an ad on a podcast? Well, nobody had ever done an ad on an ag podcast. No one even knew what it was about. My number 5 app is Farm Command app, and it is an app that I use pretty much every day. Not as much in the winter here because there's really not much to see growing in your fields, but still, there's a lot of information on there. It is a Farmer's Edge app, and I will be very forthright. This is my number 1 sponsor, so of course they're going to be on this list. When it came to advertising, though, it was no one knew what to do. I was being approached by companies that were, pretty attractive in what they were going to pay, and they're like, well, we just want you to read like a 3-minute ad script or whatever. And I was like, because I'd listen to other podcasts, and I'm like, that is like the most boring thing, because I never get past them. People are reading ads, and I just end up clicking off because everybody's so bored. Nobody really wants to listen to an advertiser. So I said, hey, well, what if I just kind of screwed around with it? What if I made fun of the company? And they're like, you can't do that in an ad. You just don't do that. Farmer's Edge approached me, and I was talking to them, and I was talking to Marina Barnes, who was the head of marketing. She's a Russian. she's mean and hard to negotiate with. And I said, well, what if I just made fun of you? She's like, sure. So that's what I've done for about a year and a half, is actually made fun of Farmer's Edge, with their blessing, of course. But no, it's been a great company to work with. They let me have a lot of freedom, but I do try to get at least one or two good points out in every ad. I don't always get it done though, and when I don't, they let me know. All right, number 4, successful farming. Now, there are other apps like this, right? So you've got the ag apps that have everything out there, right? Your news, your marketing, your weather. I know Farm Journal has a really good one. I think Sean Haney from Rural Ag Radio has one. So there are other options. The one I've got up here is One Successful Farming. It's the oldest one, and it does good. Probably more based in the States, but there's lots of options for these type of apps. As the podcast was growing, we were approached by some farm media groups, and Successful Farming came to me and said, hey, do you want to do some TV? And I'm like, I've got a really good face for radio. Maybe we should just stick to that. So we went and talked to them, and we shot some little ones here and there. It was like a 4-minute clip inside their TV show, Successful Farming, which I had never watched before. I didn't tell them that. But yeah, we started watching it. I'm like, well, nobody's going to watch this thing. It's kind of boring. So we did. We went on there, and again, I was just a smartass in front of the camera. And I thought, okay, well, we're doing this. It's just something different. Maybe it's a different audience that we don't have. I can't believe every time I go to a farm show and people recognize me, it's not because of the podcast. It's not because of the XM radio. It's because of those little things I do on Successful Farming. So it did teach me in agriculture, 2 things are so prevalent maybe that aren't in other sectors, TV and print. Because I would say those were kind of going dead. Do you guys get RFD TV up here in Canada? No? So you're not missing much. Except for this one show. It's been interesting. There's a TV is a whole new ball game. You do it in front of like a green screen, so there's nothing behind you until you watch yourself, and then you've got your farm in the back behind you. It's a little bit of magic or something that they do. It's been interesting. We did sign up for a second season of it, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, number 3, the Grain Moisture app. Anybody have this one? Yeah? I don't. But I put it in here for a reason. It was developed locally by Jeff and Sheila Elder. This is a cool app if you've got that moisture. If you've got that one moisture tester, you don't have to have the thing. So the reason I put it in here is because it shows that anybody can build an app. Has anybody in here ever built an app? Yeah? You can promote it. Go ahead.
Sorry?
You can promote it now.
The app's supposed to be defunct now because...
Oh, it's not a porn app or something, is it? No?
They were
Game apps. Okay. Gambling apps. No wonder she's not talking about them. That's fine. But it can be done, right? Yeah. So, I mean, if you have an idea of an app, and obviously the elders did, you can make one. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Anybody else make one in here? Okay, you guys get on the ball. Make some, I don't know, what kind of apps do you have in Canada? Like maple syrup stuff? Anyway, if you've got that moisture tester. And Jeff, I went to Jeff's farm last year. He taught me how to play hockey. I'd never been on ice skates before. And we had a camera crew with us, and we thought it would be funny to have Ginger up there. Ginger, raise your hands, please. Yes. You see how big Ginger is? So we thought it would be funny to have her come up and check me really hard. I thought, okay, this is going to be funny because she's probably going to bounce off of me. I was unaware that Ginger was a figure skater at one time. And as we were getting ready to do this scene, I'm sitting here in all pads, right? Like a goalie or whatever. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this black streak coming at me. She hit me so hard that I saw a spark actually went, and she did it, and she had her stick. Because you can't put your stick up like this, right? Isn't that high sticking? She was going for my head with her hockey stick. That's what I have to deal with. All right, number 2. This is my go-to, the Ag PhD app. And you go to the App Store, it's got apps for everything. Nutrition, you go for yields, seeding, basically every type of farming app you'd want is at the Ag PhD App Store. They're free, they're really well done, and they also lead me into my next story. As we were going on, we were gaining some popularity, and more media companies were coming to us, and they wanted to basically give us everything. So last winter, we spent touring all the ag media companies. We went to, there's like 6 big ones. We went to all of them, and we talked to them. And yeah, they were interesting, but we just kept thinking, boy, these guys are just so antiquated. It just seems like they're 20 years behind on their thinking and everything. So it's like, why can't we do what they're doing? I mean, they were sitting there telling us that, we think the next thing coming is podcasting. I was like, oh, really? Well, that's novel. Thanks for bringing that up. They kept coming back to the same old thing, and they wanted to buy the Shark Farmer brand. Basically, they wanted to shut down the podcast because we were taking advertising dollars, and also advertisers were going, we want to do more stuff like Farmer's Edge is doing, different, out-of-the-box stuff like that. So they're Providence in the world, and they love the fact that I was a farmer. They're like, we want a farmer because we want you to talk about, what's working on your farm. You basically, have me sit up there and go, hi, I'm Rob Sharkey, and I use this on my farm, and it works wonderful, even if it didn't work. That's just something that I couldn't do. Because, yeah, sure, short time, that would probably work fine. Long term, you'd completely lose all respect of everything. The one thing all these groups said was that we want a real farmer because we can't compete with Ag PhD. Ag PhD media is just Brian and Darren Hefty. That's all it is. But they were killing the competition. So after hearing that again and again, guess who we called? It was still a pretty good decision because some of these other media companies had a lot to offer. They had TV, they had radio, they had more podcasts, they had all this stuff. This is where we had to make a decision whether or not we were going to stay true to our brand, true to ourselves. I remember when we were making a decision, we had whiteboards, huge whiteboards made up of pros and cons of this farm media, and this farm media. And we were going to go a different route than Ag PhD because they were basically telling us what we want to hear. And isn't that hard to ignore, even when you know what's maybe doesn't quite smell right? When somebody's telling you what you want to hear, isn't that just intoxicating? We're going to give you the world. All you got to do is come with us. We had a final phone call with them, and we're talking to the CEO of the company. And he's like, there's a few things we need before we're going to finalize this deal. So we need all your downloads, so basically your analytics. Sure, no problem. We want a non-compete, so we don't want you doing anything with other media companies. I get that. And then we want a non-disclosure that also includes your wife, because we're going to be telling you things that we don't want you to tell your wife. I'll let that sink in for a second. We hung up the phone, and then it hit us what he said. Because we're so excited. Yeah, that's great, click. What the hell did he just say? What, the non-disclosure? We sat there for 20 minutes and argued that we had to have heard him wrong. So you know how it is when you're all fired up. You're like, well, let's just call him back. So we did. And we said, what's that deal with the non-disclosure? He says, well, you seem to lean on your wife a lot for decisions. And I do that because I'm a smart husband. He says, that's going to cause you troubles as we go on because we want to just deal with you. Basically, I'm a pushover. I'm like a whatever. I get distracted by shiny things, and if someone tells me I'm pretty, I smile and that. My wife's the one that's got the brains in it, so she's not going to let me be pushed around. They didn't like that. They didn't like my wife, looking out for me. So yeah, they were going to cut my wife out of the thing. So that made the decision easy. All this, we called up Ag PhD, which we didn't have a deal with at the time. They said, hey, do you think we can work something out? And they're like, it's a small media company. So they're like, sure, I'll talk to you later. And then he hung up. So it left us like the entire weekend, just kind of wondered what was going on. He calls back Monday. He's like, we're all set up. I was like, great. What's that mean? So they set us up on Sirius XM, which is my number one. And this is what we wanted the whole time. Yes, podcasting, and this goes back to, me not being sure of myself and stuff like that. The podcast was great. It was the biggest ag podcast in the world. We were killing it, but I just felt like I wasn't taken seriously. I felt like if I get on the radio, then people will take me seriously. I get down there and I talk to the RFD channel, the ones that owns the Sirius station, channel 147, and all they want to do is talk about how to podcast. So I'm like, as worried as we were about being taken seriously, we didn't realize that we were kind of in the driver's seat on things. But this is probably one of the funnest things that we've ever done. So like going from a banker telling us that we can't farm anymore and crushing our dreams to now being on Sirius radio five days a week. We do it at our house. We build a hunting lodge for the outfitter, and then we stole one of their bedrooms, like the best bedroom, which really ticked my hunters off, and we made a studio out of there. And my wife is now the executive producer of the show. If you've listened to the show, she's on it more and more, and we do that because more and more feedback said it's great when your wife talks, when you talk, not so much. But it's the best job in the world because I'm not an expert on anything. I love to farm. I'm so passionate about that. That's all I ever want to do is I want to be a farmer. I want my kids to grow up on a farm. But I'm no agronomy expert like the Hefties. I'm no marketing expert like Chip Flory. I'm no Canadian expert like Sean Haney. I'm not an expert on any of that stuff. But what I can do is listen. And I do have a knack for finding people with good stories. So I just listen to them. Every farmer has a story. They just don't know it because everyone I've ever interviewed goes, I'm not that interesting. I really don't have that much to say. I guarantee you do. If by running a farm, if you're running a business by yourself, you've got a story in that. So it's been an incredible journey. I'm not exactly sure how to tie the apps into it, but hopefully you followed my rambling. If you have questions or emails, feel free to do this. Go to sharkfarmer.com. That's where we like to get a lot of the feedback. You go to the bottom there, and on that you can see the podcast, Shark Farmer podcast, the What the Farm podcast. You can see the Sirius show. You can see the clips from the Shark Farmer TV. It's been fun, and honestly, I can look back and tie all this to apps. From getting my first smartphone where you could actually Google something. I mean, it took 25 minutes to the answer to upload because that was back on like a 0.5G, the old days. As I stand here and I realize, what we're at, I'm standing here in Brandon, Manitoba, and I'm going to do a show at 11:30 here. I mean, it's been a wild ride, and I've got no one else to thank but the people that have listened. So I appreciate you coming and listening to my app story, and I would be glad to answer any questions.
And we do have almost another record time of questions, about 10 minutes, so feel free to ask.
You made a comment that Twitter is kind of on the way down. Yeah. Can you expand on that? Why it's going that way? Well, and the question is, what is Twitter on the way down? I'm kind of a nerd on analytics for social media. I'm just looking at where that is, the percentage of people that it's using it. It is going down where Instagram seems to be the next platform that is climbing to the top. I mean, it's ebb and flow of everything. Facebook, I think, has stayed up there for the main fact that everybody got on it. And yes, even though it might be all your grandmas and that, but there's a lot of grandmas in the world, so Facebook still is standing at number one. Yeah. Do you see that? Do you think Twitter's on the way down? Yeah. It's Twitter. I got on at the very beginning, and you could have a conversation then. You could say, hey, what are you guys seeing for, like, the seed corn traits or whatever. You do that now, and it seems to be such a toxic environment. Everybody just wants to fight anymore there, and that's going to drive a lot of people away. That's my opinion, anyway. Yeah.
More questions?
Where do you see social media 5 years from now?
That's a fantastic question. I wish I knew the answer to. YouTube is a huge resurgent right now. I mean, in agriculture too, it's done phenomenal. 2 weeks ago, I interviewed the millennial farmer out of Minnesota. That guy's got close to 250,000 subscribers alone, and his videos are getting like 500,000 to 750,000. There's a guy that Farmer's Edge makes me works with every once in a while called Farmer Derek. He's insane. He just does the most random stuff. Like, I don't even know what he does. He takes a drone and puts a fishing lure on it and then catches a fish with a drone, and it gets 10 million views. It's the dumbest thing, but you can't hardly knock the guy for it. So YouTube, I think, is going to continue to climb. And I talk to my kids. So when I was a kid and someone was like, well, who's your hero? I'm like, well, Hulk Hogan or someone like that. I ask my kids, and I'm like, who do you want to be? And they're telling me names I don't know, and they're YouTube people. The people that have YouTube channels. I don't get it because I guess I'm too old, but I think YouTube is probably poised to take over a lot of television. I mean, a lot of people, my kids don't even care if we have Dish Network anymore, because they've got Netflix, they've got YouTube, and whatever else they're watching. So, yeah, I think Facebook is always going to be there. Twitter's always going to be there. It might evolve. Instagram, I think, is the one that if you were looking to really make a push on right now, I think Instagram would be the way to go, because everybody likes pretty pictures, right? Pinterest, I think that's for chicks. I don't know.
Any more questions? We have time. On this side, nobody's asking questions here. You guys asleep or what? No? One more?
What's that? The one that took me out of the realm of Twitter would be the one with Matt Chambers, and I really wish I knew the number of that now. It's going back probably over a year. It was a guy that just, I didn't know him at the time, and he just messaged me. He's like, hey, I've got a story. My son was in an accident where the hydraulics went out of a tractor, and the tractor ran over his pickup truck. And he can't talk, he can't stand up yet. So I'm like, sure, let's do that. Part of starting a podcast is it's a steep learning curve with the technology. I interviewed him. It was a great interview. I lost it, completely lost. I had to call the guy. I'm like, hey, I don't know what to tell you. I lost this interview. Can we please do it again? He's like, that's fine. Because yesterday, for the first time in 2 years, he said his first word. So, it's amazing. And of course, as a podcaster, I'm going, yeah, that's gold. So we did the interview, and then we did a part 2 of it because we had such a big response of it. And we were doing good. I mean, we were like, I don't know, somewhere around, 2,000 downloads per podcast, something like that. That one got 10,000 in the first day, and it just kept climbing. And it got more downloads than I had Twitter followers, and I'm like, okay, this is how we do it. So we started going outside of Twitter. But yeah, Matt Chambers, that podcast was great. There was also the one I did with a South African farmer. That one was probably the second biggest. I had no idea what I was getting into. That was a completely cold interview, and the passion that guy had and the stories that he told of what's going on in South Africa, that'll give you chills at night. So we farm here. There's a lot of things to complain about, but when you're out running your combine or equipment at night, you're not worried about getting shot. So I think we need to kind of remember how good we do have it at times.
Very good. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much again, Rob Sharkey. And let's give him a good hand of applause again.
Yep.